Welcome to the Euro Step Brit podcast.
Under 10 seconds. Game's going to be decided here. Harold spots up. Doesn't go. Put back is good! Roberto Canada with a second chance opportunity. Aris Lee. Per Gunther for three. Got it. Per Gunther, 3 punta. Cullen, pull up three, no good. Orcus, the offensive board. He turns around and shoots. Got it at the buzzer.
Hello, welcome to episode 35 of the Euro Step Brit podcast. We'll call this one SLB, Suggestions to Make It Better. Super League Basketball recently wrapped up its second season, filling the domestic gap left by the demise of the British Basketball League in 2024. Recently, I asked for suggestions from the basketball community on what changes they would like to see in order to improve the SLB going forward. In the end, I got a number of responses both publicly and privately. The majority from fans, but also a few involved with teams, and even a couple of current players reached out to express their opinions. So, I thought I'll do an episode where I look at some of the responses and offer a take where I can. Before I get going, it's worth pointing out that I have no skin in the game. I rock up a handful of times a season to do a commentary, but that's it. My regular involvement in the British basketball ended in the last couple of seasons of the old BBL. But like so many of you, I want our domestic basketball to be successful. If there's something in the following that can be adapted by the SLB and help it improve, I'll be happy, and I'm sure the people who suggested it will be too. So, without any further ado, let's get to it. Right, a good one to get us going. Let's start by talking about refereeing. It's one of those topics where more responses were sent to me privately than publicly, but overall, the vast majority want to see standards improved. No surprises there. One responder said the referee strike last year is still affecting the SLB to an extent 15 months down the line, and that it must be sorted and, quote unquote, they all need to put on their big boy pants and get around a table to fix it. I like to paraphrase where I can, but I think that DM quote was perfect. How to fix it? I don't know, but it's obvious to responders that it's a major priority. All parties need to come together and find a compromise to make sure we have the best refs available covering the games. Even had one DM that said, "Is Edudansky ever coming back?" Well, I have no idea on that one. And while we're on the topic of officiating, bringing in IRS is a popular request and one I agree with 100%. IRS, also known as Instant Replay System, allows referees to look at incidents during a game. The vast majority of leagues have it. The SLB does not. Yes, it would involve a little investment in equipment and training, but it's already been shown it can be used in the UK. Granted, it was a little more basic setup for the NBL teams than the system that would have been set up for the London Lions. Fewer camera angles for one, but it isn't difficult to do and it's not expensive. In my opinion, this needs to be brought in ASAP. And if you bring in IRS, why not bring in coaches' challenges as well? And this was also a popular topic with the responders. Again, this is something I agree with. I like the idea of giving coaches a maximum of 2 challenges per game, but only one can be used in the last 2 minutes of that game. In other words, if you don't use a challenge in the first 38 minutes, then you lose one of your 2. IRS would make games last a little bit longer, but not as much as you think. And I can't think of any league that introduced it and then decided, it's a waste of time and got rid of it. Now, let's talk about disciplinary procedures. This is a topic that a lot of people got upset about. Accusations of sweeping things under the carpet and pretending nothing bad ever happened, or the age it takes for any decision to be announced. There's no pretending that there were a few instances last season that didn't reflect well on the SLB. I don't need to remind you which ones they were. A couple of responders felt the current approach makes the SLB look weak, quote unquote, and too scared to do anything. But the majority of responders on this topic want to see any incidents dealt with immediately, quote unquote again, no sitting on it until we've all forgotten about it. People want to see things sorted before the next round of fixtures are played, and if that means someone missing a big game, then so be it. That's how it works. Every league has some negative PR, you can't escape it. So it would be nice to see a new approach where you can deal with it immediately and move on. And if appeals are allowed, they also need to be sorted swiftly and with a defined time limit. Right, next one. SLB women. Not so many responses about this, but from those who did, the message was loud and clear. Those involved with SLB women feel they are quote unquote invisible and forgotten about. Some said that clubs with both a men's and women's side were not doing enough to help promote the women's team. And when it came to scheduling, the women were often an afterthought. As for the SLB, it was felt the only time the SLB were interested in the women's game were at finals. Whether you agree or disagree with those responses, I think it's still quite clear the SLB women need to be appreciated more. Now, let's talk about broadcasting. The league have had a deal with DAZN to stream all games for free on their platform, and sometimes games have also popped up on YouTube. One correspondent felt it's time to put the games behind a paywall as the current situation, quote unquote, devalues admission price. I'm kind of 50-50 on this one. I can see their point, but at the same time, would it work? Definitely would mean fewer eyes on the games. That's a given. And I just can't see a high demand for SLB basketball at the moment. But at the same time, it would mean the SLB getting something back for that outlay. Not making a profit, just a smaller loss. Now, I could be completely wrong here. This is just my opinion, but I can only recall 2 times where a paywall was a good thing. The first was BBL TV. Remember that? In those days, you paid one small fee for the season, and I think it was, one game each week that was shown? For the benefit of more recent British basketball fans, this was the first streaming service set up by the then BBL, and it was a time where they're the only games you could watch unless you were physically present in the venue. There wasn't even a TV deal at the time. It was the idea that led a year or two later to the creation of livebasketball.tv, where every game in the league would be streamed. I want to say BBL TV was around 2015, as I do remember doing a secret trial broadcast around that time. The other occasion where the paywalls worked was the lockout season, the COVID. Fans couldn't get to games, clubs couldn't make any money, so paying to watch games from home was a no-brainer. Going back to my original responder, the concern is that give or take the odd season, it's been a decade of mostly free basketball and the genie is now out of the bottle. I'm not sure people would sign up for a paywall offering unless you could give them something more than just the commentaries. But extra content would cost money, and is it worth it? But, and I say but, should the SLB become much bigger than it is now, and viewing figures for games make people sit up and take notice, in that case, definitely think about it. Also suggested was getting more games on TV with praise for the recent playoff finals being shown on BBC Sport. I admit it would be nice to have more games on BBC TV or even Sky Sports, but if you're going to want to show games in a broadcaster, that's going to cost you more money as you strive to make a broadcast suitable for television. And here's the kicker. We had plenty of the old BBL on both BBC and Sky Sports, but did it really advance the game significantly? I'll let you think about that. If only the league could get a title sponsor again. And that's something else people want to see. The league bringing in sponsorship that could in turn lead to prize money for teams winning titles and also being shared amongst the member clubs. But I digress. One final topic that had a few comments on the broadcast side was regarding the way games were broadcast. In this case, cameras pointed at walls, which could include Bristol, but I'm guessing was aimed at the Surrey Niners. I absolutely agree pointing cameras at a wall is not good television. You might hear a crowd, but you can't see them, and it does take away from the game. But at the same time, I can't criticise a club like Surrey for doing so because the alternative is losing matchday revenue. Having previously worked there, it has been possible to put a camera setup on the wall side pointing towards the crowd. But in order to do so, the only way to ensure enough clearance was to move the court. And when you move the court, you're going to have to lose some floor seating on the other side, and that means the loss of some vital game day revenue. Short of going back to the wall-mounted automatic cameras, which no one wants to see come back ever, the alternative is the Niners' move to a new venue. So, in the meantime, you just have to put up with the walls. And when you talk about broadcasting, you've got to talk about commentating. And there were a fair few comments made about the commentators, I can tell you. This one's subjective, but a number felt some of the commentators were too biased towards the teams they were doing the games for. As you'll probably be aware, it's down to each individual club to sort the commentators for the games. And if you've been following the league over the last decade, you'll know that with the exception of when the old BBL decided to do commentaries remotely from a studio in West Ealing, it's a case of mostly the same faces at the same clubs week in, week out. Is there a bias? Absolutely. I'll explain why in a minute, but there's not as much as you think there is. Can it be sorted easily? Again, absolutely. One DM I received reasoned that because the commentators are effectively employed by the club, they must call it that club's way as much as possible. I don't agree, but if it were the case, it would be the wrong attitude to take. When I called games back in the day for the Surrey Scorchers, I always called them down the line, as that's what I was taught as a commentator. I was never asked to put a bias on the Scorchers, and for every time I went OTT of, say, a Quincy Taylor winner, there would be an occasion where, say, someone like Ali Fraser would pop up to score the winner for the Rocks, and I'd call it with the same level of enthusiasm. Another reason why you need to call games always down the middle is just look at your audience. A good friend of mine will often point out that apart from the lockout season, who is more likely to be watching the game? It's fans of the away team, isn't it? Now, I didn't watch a great deal of the SLB games last season because I spent most of my time working football. It's not basketball, but it pays the bills. But I didn't need to watch many games to know there is a little bias, whether it's intentional or not. It's most evident on social media when game clips are posted. I looked at plenty of them over the course of the season. Occasionally, you'll see a great play by the away team and the commentary that goes with it is flat. And then you'll see a good play by the home team and it's mayhem on the mic. And social media is why it's so important to call a game down the line. Great plays can grab attention online, but if the words that go with it reek of boredom, you're killing any chance of a viral clip. So I agree from what evidence I've seen there is a little home team bias, but as I've already said, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. And it's something that's easy to fix too. Issue some guidelines and training for the commentators if need be. Another topic regarding commentating was that commentators should not be allowed to openly criticise the officials on the broadcast. Quote unquote, it's okay to say you think they might have got the call wrong, but not to pretty much accuse them of being awful. Now, I don't know which game or games that was referring to, but if there's a case of it happening, guidelines and training, it is. Now, easily one of the most popular topics is the format of the championship. As it currently stands, a 9-team league with 8 teams making the postseason, and that's bad, really bad. All you need to have is one poor team, and it removes any jeopardy. There are 2 ways to fix it: expansion and or changing the playoff format. Let's start with the expansion angle. Many folk want to see the Liverpool team formally announced. It's been a sort of non-secret for so long that if they are joining next season, get it out into the public now. Give the team a good few months, get the word out, and build excitement for next season. Among the responders, there are also calls for a Plymouth team to return to the top flight, and as much as I'd like to see a Plymouth team come back, the league really needs them. I don't think it's possible because of venue issues, but, hopefully one day. For a bit of fun, I did ask people what locations they thought could support a new team, and I liked quite a few of the responses I got. Some of the locations named were, and I've had to write these down, Aberdeen, Birmingham, Brighton, Cardiff, Glasgow, Hull, Leeds, Nottingham, and Southampton. Some pretty good choices. There was not a single response, privately or publicly, in favour of keeping the league at 9 teams and have 8 make the playoffs. But just say you can't add any teams next season. Just say Liverpool don't join after all. How could you introduce a little bit more jeopardy into qualifying? This is where opinions got a little divided. On one hand, a suggestion to only have the top 6 qualify for the playoffs, with the top 2 getting a bye straight through to the semi-finals. Now, whether you like that idea or not, it does make qualifying harder, so there's your jeopardy. And it also rewards the top 2 teams by getting them straight through to the semis. But if I can play devil's advocate for a moment, my issue with this idea is, yes, the top 2 get a week off, but they also lose out on income from a home game. There are also suggestions to make only the top 4 qualify for the playoffs, or even the top 3 with the teams in 4th and 5th involved in a playing game. But what about the actual playoffs? How can you improve them? When it comes to playoffs, we're an outlier in Europe with our aggregate playoff system. I make no secret of the fact that I hate it, and every time I mention it, I know which people will respond to it and defend aggregate playoffs. Teams who work hard and get the best records, they deserve to be rewarded for their efforts across the regular season. But what do they get? Choice of whether to play the second leg first or second in their venue. And as we've seen on occasion, sometimes the highest seeded team can't even play the second leg at home because of venue availability. I've always been a fan of the best of series, and it seems more people are now beginning to feel that way too. I hate the fact that the playoffs as they stand is 5 games to win a trophy, and in effect you can win just 3 of them and still end up with the silverware. But while more seem to favour the idea of the best of series, my cheeky suggestion to make the final best of series as well, that wasn't popular. Looks like it's going to stay at the O2 for quite a long time. Before I leave this topic though, I'd like to bring an idea to the table. How would people like it if instead of aggregate or best of in the first round of the playoffs, it's a single elimination game? That way, you reward the top seeds for their work by giving them a home game, and it increases the jeopardy all round, hopefully making for some drama. Something the playoffs in the BBL and now the SLB often lacks. Whether you then make the semi-finals, aggregate or best of, that's down to you. But I think this single elimination for the first round is worth some consideration. Let's now switch to the European question. I'm going to only talk briefly about NBA Europe. It's A, I did an episode on it a while back, episode 28. And B, there were only 2 respondents who mentioned it. Amazingly, one was for NBA Europe teams in the SLB. The other one was against having NBA Europe teams in the SLB. I did love the responses throughout my questions because you get the opposites quite a lot. Anyhow, I digress. Starting with the positive response, it was felt that having NBA Europe teams will give the league the boost it needs, bring new eyes upon it, especially any TV deals that arise from it. As the negative one, it was the extent that any new NBA Europe team would make the SLB even more uncompetitive than it was last season due to the massive budgets that the NBA Europe teams will need. And they were worried they could see teams dropping out the SLB as a result. So, NBA Europe, do you think it will help or hinder? And while we're on the topic of Europe, the vast majority of you felt that it was a good thing that British teams were playing in pan-European competitions, although there was the odd one who doesn't want it. If you've listened to the podcast, you know about the podcast, you'll know exactly where I stand on this topic. Our teams playing in Europe can only be a good thing. Why? Let me tell you. Firstly, Playing in Europe allows us to gauge an idea just how good our domestic league is compared to everyone else. Prior to the recent influx of teams into Europe, it was impossible to gauge where we stood against our neighbours. But a few years down the line, we can see that we are improving given by a team's combined records against certain countries. But the biggest reason that playing in Europe is a good thing, it is a great recruitment tool. Players and their agents want as much exposure as they can get. And I know from discussions with coaches, and there's plenty of proof in some of the older episodes of this podcast, players are more interested when you can offer them European games as well. And that's the same for their agents. The more teams we have playing in Europe and the better they do, the more people will look to the SLB as a league going places. That should give me an idea, actually. One of the problems people have with teams playing both domestic and European basketball is the fixture pile-up. Lots of games close together. Remember, so was it Lions? Was it the first season Euro Cup? I'm not sure it was the first season. They would play like a Euro Cup on a Wednesday night and then suddenly playing a BBL game the next night. That was not ideal. I've always felt we played too many games in the BBL, what I'm saying BBL, in the SLB anyway compared to other countries. But short of ditching a competition, because we all know that didn't go down well, did it? What can you do? I think with more and more SLB teams playing in Europe, if you're not going to cut back on games, maybe it's time to extend the season. Whether you get going early in September or perhaps even extend to the end of May or beginning of June, spreading out the season even 2-3 weeks could make so much more difference. Personally, and I'm really going off topic here, I would prefer a later finish, as we're one of the first European leagues to wrap up every season. But also, I've not been able to attend a playoff final in a while because it always clashes with either the final or penultimate weekend of the Premier League. And I'll always be working a game. The last 2 rounds of the Premier League football are always on a Sunday, and I do wonder what it would do for attendance and media coverage at the O2 if there wasn't any clashes with football. After all, it is the number 1 sport in the country. But like I said, I was digressing again. So, getting back on topic, how about imports? This is something that people had a lot of opinions, but there wasn't a whole lot of consensus. Some want more, some want less. A small number want none at all. It's another topic which is divisive. Some want the best players we can get, and that means getting good imports. While some others feel if we had no imports at all, most people wouldn't notice. As for my opinion, the ones who would notice are those who care about the sport the most. And would they settle for the obvious drop in quality? I don't think so. Right, moving from imports to pathways. And whatever happens around import numbers, many people want to see more opportunities for young players to shine in the SLB. Opinions varied from teams having to have junior age groups across the board, right up to senior, to any GB juniors playing SLB not to have their salaries counted against the cap. There were so many different options, but the overall consensus was here, let's have our young players involved more, getting chances to play in the SLB. All right, next up, let's go for game nights in the SLB. People want change, but can't agree on just what change needs to happen. The biggest divider, family-friendly atmospheres, or to quote one response as, an ultra culture. I do like that. I feel games in the SLB don't allow the fans a chance to express themselves much. Every dead second is accounted for. You may remember a lot of complaints on social media a few years ago that fan chants were being drowned out at a certain team by the host stroke MC stroke DJ every time there was a stoppage. Personally, I'd take a European experience over what we have right here in the UK any day. And by that, I don't necessarily mean the hardcore ultras you get in Serbia, Turkey, Greece. Although that said, the night the Panathinaikos fans took over the Uber Arena in Berlin in the EuroLeague final in 2024, arguably the best atmosphere I've ever experienced at a game. I've been to domestic games across Europe and experienced some great atmospheres. Quite often, one section of the arena is populated by the most loyal and noisy fans who will all be decked out in team colours, will have flags, possibly even display tifos like you often see in youth football, and they would chant pretty much all game. As for the UK, some of the best experiences I've experienced have been during the Lions Euro Cup games. Anyone who's been to games featuring the various Turkish opponents, or even that Žalgiris game last season, will know exactly what I mean. I would love to see groups of the more passionate fans of each team come together, have dedicated sections of venues, and just be let loose to make as much noise and encouragement as they like. But when it comes to the SLB, I think the chances of it happening are low. And you know what? I think it's time to wrap up. I've been talking non-stop for a good few minutes now. There were other suggestions like introducing an ELAM ending in one of the competitions. I'm not sure if that would work, but it could be interesting. Or there was one insisting that Manchester Basketball get a proper name. That did make me laugh. Along with other suggestions like BCB teams included in one of the knockout competitions include them every season. And there's probably more I've forgotten to mention or jot down on my sheet, but I think we've covered the most important ones. But that'll do for now. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to share the podcast on your socials, tell everyone about it. I'm always interested in any suggestions for future guests, so let me know any ideas you have or any topics that I could potentially discuss like I have today. I can be reached on a dedicated Euro Step Brit account on Blue Sky or via Hoops and Hockey on Instagram and X. Until the next time, my name's Niall Gray. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Euro Step Brit podcast, a Hoops and Hockey production.